Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security. The Cognitive Crucible is a forum that presents different perspectives and emerging thought leadership related to the information environment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of or endorsement by the Information Professionals Association.
Hello, this is John Bicknell, and welcome to this special bonus episode of the Cognitive Crucible. As longtime listeners of the Cognitive Crucible know, the Information Professionals Association is the nexus for information professionals interested in the application of soft and hard science and innovative technologies to advance the security, prosperity, shared values, and international order through the free flow of ideas and information. So on the podcast, we engage with people who have different perspectives on the information and cognitive problem. And this includes, of course, academics, business innovators and technology leaders, futurists, various Western partners, government leaders, and of course, those who are doing impactful work in a national security or defense context. So as part of IPA's mission, we want to showcase complementary initiatives, and I personally invite people who are doing interesting work within government agencies or students perhaps who are studying related problems, either master's students, PhD students, even high school students. If you're working on projects that are related to the information and cognitive problem that is facing us, you are cordially invited onto the Cognitive Crucible to discuss your efforts. And so one such organization is the United States Marine Corps' II MEF Information Group, or II MIG. And II MIG has a brand new podcast called Gladiator School. And to tell us about this podcast is Colonel Brian Russell, who also happens to be a previous Cognitive Crucible podcast guest. And so with that, Brian Russell, welcome back to the Cognitive Crucible.
John, thank you for the introduction, and it is great to be back. I want to start by thanking the Information Professionals Association and the Cognitive Crucible and your efforts for increasing and expanding our collective knowledge on the information environment. I actually cite the Cognitive Crucible in all of my welcome aboard briefs to the officers and staff non-commissioned officers who check in to II MEF Information Group as something they need to put in their kit bag to increase their professional knowledge. We recognize that as a Marine Corps in our doctrine, Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 7 Learning. We all have a personal responsibility to increase our learning. So when it comes to the information environment, John, the Cognitive Crucible is one of those things that just has to be on your listening list each and every day, I think.
Yeah, well, thanks for that feedback, Brian. And I've gotten some similar feedback from some listeners in the military communities that the podcast has, I guess, started developing, into a little bit of like a water cooler discussion as to whatever was on that week. People kick around here and there. So it warms my heart to hear that from you. Gladiator School, your new podcast. Tell us about it, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that opportunity. I want to start by saying I stole this term Gladiator School from Lieutenant General Glavy, who's our current Deputy Commandant for Information. When I worked for him at Marine Corps Forces Cyberspace Command, he always referenced his command, MARFOR Cyber, as a version of Gladiator School. If you think about the cyberspace domain, it's always on. His forces were always engaged in it. And so he thought there was an incredible amount of learning about the cyberspace domain for Marines that we could then export to the Marine Corps to learn how to operationalize that domain. So I view the MEF Information Group very similarly. My Marines are engaged in the information environment each and every day. And so the intent of Gladiator School is to take our learning and then express that to certainly a Marine Corps audience, but certainly an audience like the Cognitive Crucible, information professionals, perhaps even allies and partners, give them the practitioner's view of what operations in the information environment means and maybe how to apply it in their own missions. And I want to be clear about that. We will talk probably a lot about the MEF Information Group, but operations in the information environment is absolutely a Marine Corps requirement to understand to be effective in service of national security policy. So to the original point, I think podcast is a great platform to do that, and maybe it generates some of those water cooler conversations out in the fleet to talk about what this information environment is really all about.
So what are the kinds of things that listeners of your Gladiator School podcast, what are the things that they're going to hear about?
I think even more importantly than what they hear about, it's who they hear it from. Our intent is to get our Marines who are engaged in this environment each and every day to give their opinions, give their experiences about what it means to operate in the information environment. And we'll bring a couple different perspectives into that, John. We might talk about a particular domain like the cyberspace domain, or we might talk about a particular approach when we talk about influencing an audience. How do we do that? And so that's the idea, is really bring the practitioners into it, and about every 2 to 3 weeks, put that podcast out and stimulate that conversation. But hey, while I've got your audience on the line, we certainly want to hear from you. What do you want to hear about the MEF Information Group, about the Marine Corps, and our approach to this information environment? We do want to answer those questions. A great opportunity for us, John, to do that.
We will have links in the show notes to all of the various channels that are available. And with that, Colonel Brian Russell, thank you so much for being a guest on the Cognitive Crucible.
Thanks again, John. Really appreciate the opportunity.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.